Good morning to all of you, and it's my pleasure to have all of you on the screen, the honorable people from the Deakin University, and our Vice Chancellor, Dr. Raj, our Dean of Business School, our Vice Dean, Professor Gandok, and my colleague, Professor Laknath. So we are live now. I have been informed by the IT team. Formally welcome you for today's most important and historic event we have been wishing to happen. And welcome once again. And I would request now Professor Pawan Gandok to just have an inaugural word.
Thank you. Thank you, Vikram. It's an absolute delight to be here and to welcome our panel for this wonderful launch of this joint business analytics degree, both by JGU and by Deakin. And it's wonderful to have our founding Vice Chancellor, Professor Steve Rajkumar from JGU, Professor Gary Smith, who's the Deputy Vice Chancellor Global Engagement from Deakin. I'm not sure if Professor Mike Ewing is able to join us, but if he's there,
Yep.
most welcome. Lovely to see you, Mike. Welcome.
Hi.
Fantastic
Thank
to see you. And also similarly, the Dean Rajesh Chakravarti, the Dean from Jindal Global Business School. Special warm welcome to our guest of honor from the Australian High Commission, Mr. Brett Galt-Smith. Who I promise we will not be dropping any further balls on this and are running with this, who's the Counselor of Education and Research for South Asia at the Australian High Commission in Delhi. Special welcome. A special welcome to my colleagues, Professor Laknath Jayasinghe, who is our Vice Dean at the Jindal Global Business School, and to Ravneet Pava, who's the Deputy Vice President Global and CEO of South Asia for Deakin University. So without much further ado, I think I'd request our founding Vice Chancellor, Professor C. Rajkumar, to make some opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Pawan. Such a pleasure. I'm very excited about this particular relationship. As Gary mentioned, while we are actually signing an MOU today, our relationship with Deakin, goes back to the early founding of our university itself. Ravneet has been at the vanguard of Australia's presence in India, but also the kind of partnership that we have established today. While a formal MOU of this kind is being signed today, I must say that Deakin University, we have always seen Deakin as one of our very close partners. We have done several programs together. There has been a lot of interaction between faculty members, including visits, conference participations, lectures, workshops, seminars, even opportunities for us to be part of many initiatives that Deakin University has promoted in India. So there is a certain degree of comfort level that has reached. It's almost like we've been dating for a very long time, and now this is just a formal social acceptance of the relationship. So I'm very excited about the MOU itself. It's also important at this time when the very idea of internationalization has been challenged in unimaginable ways due to the global pandemic. And universities around the world are in many ways fundamentally reimagining their vision, their imagination, their focus, their strategy, and their approach towards internationalization. It is in this context that we are creating and building this relationship. As it has been the case, Deakin University has been providing that leadership for a very long time. And there are very few universities around the world, and not just in Australia, which has a more deeper and a stronger and a more pervasive commitment towards both internationalization and its India activities and initiatives. So I want to congratulate Professor Gary Smith and other leaders, including the Vice Chancellor of Deakin University, but also my dear friend Ravneet for her leadership in advancing this relationship. It's also equally important that the MOU that we are signing today will build from strength to strength because of the type of programs that we are doing today. I'm very grateful to the Dean of Jindal Global Business School, Professor Rajesh Chakrabarti, and his colleagues, Professor Pawan Gandok and Laknath Jayasinghe, and also Vikram Tomar and Akhil Bharadwaj. All of them have worked hard to make sure that we take this matter to its logical conclusion. It's so wonderful to see Mike Eving as well as Mr. Smith from the embassy, because in many ways, this relationship, we will be able to make it work if only we have individual leaders taking responsibility and also taking matters to its logical conclusion. At least from our university standpoint, this year has been a phenomenal year. I must confess that. Right when COVID-19 happened in March 2020, we had the news of the QS rankings in law released, and we became India's #1 law school and one of the top 101 to 150 ranked law schools in the world. A little later, we became top 700 in the world and India's #1 private university in the month of June. And in October, we were declared formally by the Ministry of Education, Government of India, as an institution of eminence. And we are one of only 3 Indian private universities and 10 Indian public universities to have been declared and conferred the status of an institution of eminence, the signing of a memorandum of understanding with the Ministry of Education, Government of India. All of that augurs well for our future. But equally important was that last year we have had a 50% increased enrollment, student enrollment in the university, and a 70% increased enrollment in the students in the law school itself. This also gave us a lot of motivation, and we began to work harder than ever before. And just a week ago, the QS released the subject rankings for law, and we moved from, say, 101 to 150 in the world to 76 in the world in the QS subject law rankings, and also became India's #1 law school. No law school in India has been in that ranking this year, so we are again very delighted. I have always maintained that the trend and the foundations that the law school had laid in the year 2009 is indeed catching up across all schools of the university, and the business school is no exception. In the last few years, JGBS has grown from strength to strength under the leadership of Dean Rajesh Chakrabarti, and the new programs and the new initiatives with nearly 100 faculty members. JGBS is at the vanguard of promoting research. Even within the JGBS, the kind of research that is taking place is quite inspiring. And this collaboration that we are establishing today will have many forms and manifestations, which will hopefully in the future include faculty research, joint research projects, joint research initiatives, joint conferences, joint publications, things that faculty members around the world will do. So I'm very excited about those possibilities as well. So with those words, I want to once again congratulate Deakin University and friends and colleagues there, and of course JGU and JGBS for taking this forward. And I'm very confident that we will be able to host all of you in India sooner than later. I can't wait to sit on a plane to come to Deakin, and look forward to strengthening this idea further. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Rajkumar. I must admit, I can't wait on a plane to get back to JGU for starters. But I also wanted to share with everyone that the wonderful thing with this MOU is the launch officially today of the first joint undergrad degree, the BBA Honors in Analytics, where students can spend 2 years at JGU and spend another 2 years at Deakin, and that's really the key way of us signaling rubber on the road. Is very timely and very exciting at this point in time. So let me request Professor Gary Smith from Deakin to please also offer some opening remarks.
Look, thanks, Professor Gandok, and Professor Raj and Professor Rajesh and colleagues. It's great to be on this Zoom meeting with you and to have a conversation about our articulation agreement, which we're about to formally sign or sign again online. We're just emerging, as you know, from various forms of lockdown. So we're finding appropriate clothing to wear. I've come into Deakin downtown, where I first met Raj 5 years ago. I think I'm the only one here, apart from someone at the desk and someone hidden in an office. There's room for another 150 people, and I've managed to find some appropriate clothing to wear, unlike Mike, who's still sitting at his home work desk and is just in his daily wear. So we've got our wardrobe problems that we have to face as we re-emerge into workplace. And we expect very quickly in the next weeks and after the Easter period.
So Gary, that's going to be the next Zoom innovation, that you can choose your clothes and just wrap it up, and that's how you will be visible.
That's right. Well, that's right. So it's only from above the waist and so on. So there's a very limited requirements. And so anyhow, there were some strange clothes in my cupboard, which I've been looking for recently as we come back to office. We've functioned very well online as Deakin. We've functioned very well as an organisation. We've functioned amazingly well in our teaching because we had such a strong digital capability that we've been able to look after our students here in a way second to none. I mean, not as necessarily what students would have wanted, but the flip to online for this last year in 2020 was very successful, and student satisfaction rates were almost as high as of a regular year. So we're very pleased with that. We're not very pleased with the total travel bans that we have and the inability of anyone to fly in or out of Australia, and that will change eventually, of course. So thanks for the welcome, and congratulations first of all to the amazing success that you're having at OP Jindal. It just goes on this continuous rise in quality and in quantity. So you've got the combination of a huge set of demands upon you because of your success, and the more successful you are, the more demand you will have on you for growth and this extraordinary rise in all these rankings and quality results, which is fabulous to see. I think I'm a great supporter of articulation agreements such as the one we're concluding. I think students who are educated across two systems have an enormous opportunity. They see the world from two different lenses. They see from two different cultural perspectives, and it's almost an untaught dimension of their learning that they become culturally competent in ways that can never be got from textbooks or from studying another country. And this places them very strongly positioned, I think, to become great local, national and global citizens of the kind that we're trying to create in our graduates. So I think they're very advantaged, those students who can become part of this joined up teaching effort across two countries. So that's fabulous to see. Deakin is moved into a new strategic plan for the next decade, and although we're constructed such a plan in COVID, we're looking in and out and then beyond COVID, but at the same time pondering how COVID will impact on the way we do operate in the future, and one obvious way in which staff may actually work a lot more from home as well as at work, and depending what jobs they're doing in the university. And this is flexibility around workforce can also support recruiting sometimes excellent staff who are looking for flexibility. But we, of course, have great campuses as well as great online, and we're getting our great campuses back into operation this week with many thousands of students turning up at our campuses at Geelong and Burwood and Warrnambool. Our strategic plan, just a couple of quick points to mention. One, ideas to innovation, I think, is a theme that we'd all resonate with, and we're focused, of course, on our research and innovation side, and as you are, and on our teaching and education. We've linked education to employment. The Deakin makes a very big play of emphasising employability in the way it educates students at the university. And we've got a couple of awards which should mention. One was the Victorian International Education Award for Excellence in the category of international student employability and career development. So this is a recognition from our state government. They were number one. And we've also had recognition in Australia from industry. The industry groups across Australia vote for the best career service in Australian universities of the 40 universities. And I think it's the second time now consecutively that we've won that award as the best. So we have a very determined effort to assist students in that, not just in their student life, but in their transition to work, whether that's work in Australia, in India or in third countries. We're quite open to where hopefully students can work as we come out of the pandemic into a more internationally mobile world that we want to return to. We're as deeply committed to internationalization as you are, Raj, at OP Jindal, and I hope that we, through this kind of activity, give that real life and expression. So it's great to be here today, and thanks from Deakin for all the efforts put in by your staff and our staff have contributed. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Gary Smith. That's terrific. Let me now request Mr. Brett Kate Smith from the Australian High Commission, please.
Pawan, can you speak a little louder, Pawan?
Sure. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay. Let me now request. Thank you, Mr. Gary Smith. Let me now request Mr. Brett Kate Smith from the Australian High Commission to share his thoughts.
Thank you very much, Pav, and thank you very much, everybody, for having me to say a few words today. I really want to acknowledge Professor Raj Kumar, Professor Rajesh Chakrabarty, Professor Sean Starr. I think I see Sean is there. Of course, Professor Pavan Ganduk, great to see you again. Also, Professor Gary Smith, it's really lovely to see you, Gary, Professor Mike Ewing, and of course, Ravneet, who, as Raj has said, is really, I think I sent Ravneet a message yesterday calling her a rock star. I think she is with being listed in the top 10 influential women at the moment. Look, I think it's fitting that I'm here giving the analogy that Professor Raj Kumar gave about the formalising of the relationship, given that ordinarily in Australia, I'm a wedding celebrant or a marriage celebrant, and this is what I do. I bring people together formally, although I won't be signing any documents today. And I can't go past Professor Gary Smith's comment about clothing. I think I'm the only one who's wearing my Jindal tie, which was presented when I visited the university by yourself, Raj, last year. I had to make sure that I wore that today, though I'm not sure you can see it very well. Look, it really is a pleasure to make some opening remarks here, and my remarks really, I think, want to place this this agreement in some kind of a context, really, in terms of the Australia-India relationship. You know, academic collaborations like this are really important for the continued future of the bilateral relationship, and we've already heard about a little bit about that in terms of students, in terms of international research, internationalisation. Look, this is particularly so given the comprehensive strategic partnership that was signed, that was, I should say, was agreed between Australia and India in June last year. It particularly lends its education is a central pillar of the India-Australia relationship, and it's particularly noted in that comprehensive strategic partnership. And these sorts of partnerships are extremely beneficial because they leverage initiatives of both governments to maximise the return on emerging needs and opportunities in the education sector. They're extremely critical. It also aligns and is a step forward in the Indian government's national education policy and its intention to promote internationalisation of education. It's a central, internationalisation is a central tenet of the national education policy and integrating India's system into the best education practices in the world. So we see it as particularly critical. And I note that the University Grants Commission here in India has very recently released draft regulations for comment on things such as credit points acquired in foreign universities to be counted for the award of a degree, dual degrees, joint degrees, twinning arrangements, those sorts of things. And those sorts of regulations and the confidence with which India is approaching the internationalisation of its national education policy wouldn't be possible without these sort of examples, the examples of institutes of NMANs joining up with other institutions. So they're really, really critical and they lead the way. And I think it's important that we recognise that in its international and it's in its India-Australia strategic context. These sorts of things are very important, and we talk about them. Believe it or not, in policy and in government circles, we actually use these as living examples of the way in which our education agendas can be promoted. So I just want to reinforce that the sorts of regulations, the sorts of arrangements that are being seen, the transformation in India's education system wouldn't be possible without these sorts of arrangements in place. I note the comments about travel. We all welcome international travel when it can occur again. The good thing is, in terms of the arrangements that Deakin and Jindal are setting up, is that it provides a pathway for students that eventually will go on to travel to Australia. And I have a great confidence. We can see the pandemic is gradually being managed. Students will travel. The India-Australia relationship is going to continue to grow. I think it's already been very solid. The strategic interests are aligning, but more importantly, I think the interests of our people are aligning. And I also believe that these sorts of arrangements meet the other, I guess, criteria in these relationships. And these are strong people-to-people links. So I don't know everybody here, but I know a number of you now. And I begin to continue as friends. Pavan and I have played cricket, for example, back here in Delhi. So these arrangements are more than only professional. They actually provide the strong people-to-people links that both of our governments are requiring. They live on beyond the signing of the agreement, or they live on beyond the students undertaking the courses. So I really pay credit to Jindal, and I pay credit to Deakin as well. It's a wonderful relationship, and I wish you all the very, very best in this particular venture. And thank you for asking me to speak today.
Thank you, Brett. That's lovely. In fact, I also wanted to point out that Professor Mike Ewing is actually on our international advisory board at the Business School Advisory Board. So, you know, we truly have a very warm and deep relationship. And your point about the people-to-people is absolutely well made. Let me now request, you know, both Professor Gary Smith and Professor Rajkumar to just formally e-sign the MOU, just as a mark of you know, this momentous occasion. And I don't know if we have a virtual orchestra crescendo at this point, but thank you. That's maybe just some warm applause. Fantastic. Thank you to both our leaders, and big congratulations, warm congratulations to everyone in the team. And I think this is a wonderful opportunity. Let me now request Ms. Ravneet Pava to share some remarks, and then we'll do some Q&A with the panelists. So Ravneet, over to you.
Thanks very much, Pavan, and thank you to OP Jindal team and the Deakin team for making this happen. Like I said, you know, we have known each other for a very long time. And Raj, I do remember coming into your office, I think in the very initial days of, you know, you sort of operating from your office. And it is heartening to see how beautifully Jindal University has made its mark in India and internationally. You know, we are privileged to be your partners. And I think that it'll go a long way in supporting not just the institutions, but the students. And I think that this partnership is a win-win for the students, because they get to stay in India for 2 years, you know, really understand and study an Indian degree at a, you know, eminent institution in India. And then they transfer their credits and they come to Deakin University and they get both the degrees. From an Indian institution and from an Australian institution, and in a period of 4 years. So they save money, they get accredited qualifications, and they become more employable in the world. So I think it's a beautiful partnership that has come together finally. We have done, like Raj said, quite a few things together. We have, the Jindal Law School and Deakin Law School had done some initial events and mobility programs. And I think also through your business school, we have had mobility programs. But this is just the start. Where I sit, I think Deakin is, like Professor Gary Smith said, we are just entering into our next stage of our strategic plan. And it has been an amazing effort on behalf of the Deakin leadership to continue its very, very strong and committed engagement with India in these difficult times. I do thank Gary and the Vice Chancellor for their support to Deakin University in India, in South Asia. We are in difficult times, but it is partnerships like this that will go a long way in supporting each other and supporting, the cause of international education and partnership. I think, like Brett said, the Australia-India relationship is also, I think, on a very, very strong head start. And I don't see any reason why, other than the borders not being opened, I think we just want to make a point on that, we do need, movement. And I'm hopeful this will happen soon between the two countries. People-to-people linkages, institution-to-institution linkages, and government-to-government linkages are the foundation of a very strong partnership. And I think that under the leadership of our prime ministers and the high commissioners, we do have that quite well in place. And going forward with the national education policy in India after 32 years, and the very strong commitment, of Australia to partner with India, across all domain areas, including education as a flagship sector, which actually is pointed out in both the AIES and the IES reports as well. And that goes a long way in saying partnerships like this are absolutely instrumental in a very strong foundation between the two countries. I'd like to thank each one of you for coming along, and to the Deakin South Asia team and to the OP Jindal team for making this happen. And of course, to Deakin in Australia. My good friend Mike is here. I may ask Mike to say a few words as well.
Please.
Thanks, Rav. I want to just echo the thanks to Gary, Raj, Pawan, Brett, Pavan, and Rav, and the whole OP Jindal team. We've had a long relationship with OPJ, particularly in the law school space, for a number of years now, and we are thrilled to extend that partnership into the business school. We're still talking about further law collaboration, particularly around a DIRI PhD program and joint research. So that's ongoing. I just need to get the elephant out of the room, and that is the clothing issue. Gary, I'm debating whether to file a workplace bullying claim against you or a sexual or a sexual harassment claim. It'll be one.
Or just get better dressed. There's a simple way out of this.
It'll be one of those two claims that HR will be in touch with you to discuss further. Like Gary, I've known Raj and Sean's staff from day one. I think I was also at that meeting back in 2017, and another meeting, and then meetings in Delhi. I've had a lot to do with Indian universities, both public and private. And it's no surprise that the chemistry tends to be a bit stronger with the private universities. And then even there, the chemistry with Jindal has been spectacular from day one. And I think that's ultimately the foundation to this relationship, is people-to-people relationships and personal chemistry. Rankings, schmankings, that's all nice, but I think that comes after you have the chemistry in place. The Jindal law ranking is amazing. I'm well aware of that. That was brought to my attention a few days ago. I'm sure it's just a coincidence that the VC is a rock star, Harvard-educated Rhodes Scholar lawyer. I'm sure that's got nothing to do with the amazing QS rankings. So I might stop there, and then we can talk. Well, analytics is close to our heart at Deakin and in the business school. We launched the first master's degree in the country in business analytics in 2013. now everyone has a degree in analytics, but we were the first and the first to be accredited. And we've built on that expertise. We've got sports analytics, customer analytics, HR analytics. We've got an undergraduate degree in analytics, which I didn't think was going to work, and I've been proven wrong. It's proven to be very successful. I thought analytics was more suited to the postgrad market. And now we're talking about AI, obviously, because that's where the world is going, and looking to integrate AI into the space as well. So business analytics, AI, India. You know, you can't talk about analytics and AI without talking about India, because India is at the forefront of AI and analytics. So, you know, again, you've got a 1 + 1 = 3 synergy, I think, with this degree going forward. I mean, I could talk all day about analytics and employment, but I think I'll stop here, Pawan, and we can throw it open for questions.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for so beautifully capping those points. And I think it's particularly relevant, you know, just building on your and Ravneet's points. The timing of what we're talking about here is, despite people, you know, travel being difficult, with this 2+2 partnership, we are able to offer to students and parents the a meaningful opportunity to keep their aspirations and dreams alive of getting, you know, Australian and international exposure, and yet progress their education pathway, and also to study and pursue a degree in the area of analytics, whose employment prospects are only accelerating because of these sets of issues. Let me just request our Dean, Rajesh Chakrabarti from JGBS, to also comment on the relevance of, you know, where this partnership fits in with, you know, many of the other new offerings that JGBS has also created, and your thoughts about you know, how this pathway and this partnership fits in. Thank you.
Thank you, Pawan. Hi, everyone. And Pawan, thanks so much to you and Laknath for steering this partnership to its current state. And of course, as Raj mentioned, we have had a long and sustained connect with Deakin. And in India, not just in GU, but broadly, Deakin is associated with innovative programs in various fields. And it's really an honor to be part of this occasion where we are formalizing the connect between the two institutions. I would like to echo to an extent Professor Ewing's comments about the excitement that is there around analytics programs in India today. And yes, Professor Ewing is absolutely right. India has produced a large number of papers and research in the area of AI. Actually, if you look at scientific output, India is probably, just in terms of counting papers, probably 3rd or 4th in the world in this space, one would not have expected India to have such a strong presence in. What is interesting, however, and this is really something where I don't think any one of us also has a complete grip over the reality, but we are also trying to figure out what are the facts here, is a little bit of a disconnect between the research and the application, which is where the business school people come in. And a lot of new ideas are getting tossed around. Several companies in the service sector, in the manufacturing sector, they are looking at this space and saying, well, data is everywhere. Very often, the application leadership comes from multinational corporations with their much more advanced capabilities of using data and moving ahead with analytics. But also, the Indian companies themselves are picking up on the cue. They are at both ends trying to apply this newfangled thing, which has caught on the imagination. And I think right now, the business schools are a bit nervous about analytics programs because they have stolen the thunder of our traditional MBA programs. People are more excited about analytics degrees than they are about plain vanilla MBA degrees, which is we take that news with mixed feelings in B schools. But the fact of the matter is that India itself is trying to figure out what to do with it, and anything that anything that gets going in India, of course, as we all know, it has the potential of getting India scaled, which can mean a massive thing. But to be honest, right now, I think analytics, AI, most certainly, is more talked about than understood. So it's important that a serious, solid program cuts through all the talk and really gets down to things and prepares students to be employable. Both sides of this partnership, in Australia as well as in India. And when our students visit Australia, they may wish to stay back there and continue their experience there and learn more, or they may choose to come back and find important roles here. I think both countries, definitely India, the Indian employers will get massively benefited from these students coming home with a proper understanding of really two still quite different realities. I mean, India has its own possibilities, challenges, and resources at this point. Australia is a very different story, and the complementarity of between these two realities, I think, is truly fascinating, and I'm very excited about the possibilities that this program can offer. So I'll stop there, and thanks once again for this opportunity, Pawan. Thank you.
Thank you, indeed, Rajesh. Really appreciate it. I think absolutely. The point is that, analytics is clearly a foundational skill now. It's not necessarily just another specialization, and so clearly it's appropriate and important for young students, and parents to think about this as a component in the undergrad education itself, as opposed to deferring it till postgraduate, as Mike said. But I think you touched upon and that's why it's a very interesting opportunity, and it fits in very well with our new BBA offering in the analytics area, but also equally students from our BBA general management, after the first 2 years, both students from both of those streams would find this an interesting pathway to take up this BBA honors analytics to spend the latter 2 years at Deakin. But I think this leads to a very interesting question of, the differences as well as the opportunities of, after having spent some time learning in India, how would it be? How is it different? How is learning and university life, at Deakin in Australia going to be different? And maybe I'll ask not only Professor Gary Smith, but also if any other panelists want to chime in. But we also have two wonderful colleagues in Sean Starr and Professor Lucknath, who might also have perspectives on this, having spent time in the other direction. So perhaps first you, Gary, and then to some of the other panelists. Go ahead, Gary.
Thanks for that invitation. I think as you look, I'm going to defer to experts on this shortly, but within the university itself, we have more and more people with analyst or analytic and connected to their name dispersed throughout the organization. And this leads to a dilemma, and I think it's an interesting one. Do we try and gather this capability into a more centralized place, which I think has significant advantages and dangers, or do we see this as a foundational professional skill that's embodied across the institution in many different ways? And from my perspective, we're interested in market analytics, and that's one separate domain, if you like, future focused, looking at future, trying to get data that's at the cutting edge of job trends and so on, to try and feed back into our thinking about degree course innovation and the like. So I'm fascinated from a distance with the growth of analytics as a discipline. I agree that the bachelor's level connection is really important. It is a real sign that this, as was said, is a foundational skill. So I'll defer to others, but I can see the force of analytics pushing for change and innovation and improvement in the university on many levels.
Thank you, Gary. I think there's two interesting themes here, and let's tease both of them apart. Let's first just take the lead from Gary and talk a little bit more about, analytics and data, and get a few other panelists' reactions, and then we'll tease out the differences in learning between Australia and India and tease out that theme a little bit. But just further on the point of Professor Gary's points about, if any of the other panelists, particularly Mike, I'm looking at you, or if Professor Rajkumar, and if you want to have a point of view, my submission to you would be is that there's far too much hype about data being the gold and the new oil and whatever have you. Whereas I think increasingly they're coming to the point of view that until and unless you have the analytics engines for the insight and the analytic capabilities to derive insight, then data might just be sand, and you have to sift through it to find the proverbial rich veins of ore. So any thoughts from other panelists there? Mike, let me first turn to you. And
I sway on this on a daily basis. I mean, is business analytics an oxymoron? Is it a tautology? Well, it's not a tautology. Is it an oxymoron? Can you do business without being analytical? And then that raises another issue for me. And in my own mind, I still can't reconcile this. I see three levels of analytics. At the top, what you might call data analytics or data science. And, without being pejorative, that's where I see the propeller heads inventing algorithms, inventing new methods, writing code. And then at the bottom, there's that applied level, and Gary mentioned this, marketing analytics, customer analytics, HR analytics, sports analytics, anything analytics. And then in the middle is business analytics. And will business analytics be gone in 5 years' time or 10 years' time? And you'll only have the higher order data science and the much lower order applied? I don't know. Or does business analytics stay as the umbrella? Will we even be saying analytics in 10 years' time? Or will we just be saying, business insights or marketing? Because it'll be impossible to do marketing without analytics. We were watching the IPL auction, and we have a partnership with Rajasthan Royals, and you see the analytics they do on players, and I mean, that's part and parcel of recruiting talent, is to do that analytics. And so I wouldn't want to put my own money on where it's going. I'd like to bet Gary's money. I'd put Gary's house on it, but I wouldn't put my own house because I'm not sure, how it's all going to. I think of e-commerce. Do you remember back in 2000, we all talked about e-commerce, and then it was e-business, and then it was e-everything, and now it's e-nothing, because e is everywhere. And sometimes I wonder, is analytics going to go down the same path? I don't know. But right now it's very exciting. It's very, very exciting.
I think that's certainly a rich debate. I do have a point of view, but before I do that, let me ask some other panelists. I want to request Brett to go next, and maybe Professor Rajkumar has also raised his hand. So after that, Professor Rajkumar. Go ahead, Brett.
Okay, thank you very much. I won't speak from the academic side, but I think part of that question was about what does that experience give students in Australia. I want to go back to the internationalisation side and just think about, as India internationalises its education system, the students that will have studied in Australia will have had that internationalisation experience. The University Grants Commission is getting all of the universities to set up offices of international affairs, and so students, of course, will feed into that. And I also take an earlier point, and I'm not sure whether it was Ravneet that made it, about the job readiness of students. I think that the academic study of students, as well as the work experience opportunities that there are in Australia in an international context, and they're not all in 7-Eleven shops or whatever. There are very good jobs that students are doing. Again, prepares students for that more internationalized experience, which gives allows them to be work ready, which is, of course, is a major priority of the Indian government as well. That's my comment.
Thank you, Brett. I'll request Professor Rajkumar, and then I'll also request Professor Lucknoth and Professor Sean Starr to be ready next. Go ahead, Professor Rajkumar.
Hey, thank you. Listen, I'm not an expert in this field at all, but what I can tell you is that the idea of using various forms of data management solutions to address different aspects of, improving strategic decision making within business, using aspects of data mining or predictive analytics or statistical analytics. These things are not only going to be confined to the idea of business. It's going to be useful in a variety of settings, including in public policy, in governmental decision making, in a whole range of things. So I strongly believe that this is going to become a very important, at least from a student standpoint. Those who pursue these programs are going to be better situated in a number of aspects and not only confined to business itself. So in that sense, I see a very strong future. Of course, certain aspects of which will also be, both artificial intelligence and robotics and machine learning. All of this will also impact it. And so we need to be, as academic institutions, dynamic about it, respond to new changes that are going to emerge, and the conventional modes of teaching these courses will have to be carefully re-examined and see where the industry is going as well.
Thank you, Professor Rajkumar. Really appreciate that. Professor Lucknoth, please.
Thanks, Pavan. Hi, everyone, and I'm really pleased. I'm thrilled, actually, to be here and to witness this union, as Raj put it before, the sort of social formalizing of a long-term partnership. I'm fascinated by the idea of analytics. I must just broach and state my position. I'm a qualitative researcher, as many of you know, and I've been fascinated by the rise of the big data story. And it's interesting that Mike before mentioned, over the last 20 or so years, how the discourse, the storytelling and the discourse of the, if you want to put it, the methodology broadly has shifted. It's the storytelling, the wrapping it up in a nomenclature term. And, this tends to shift from time to time to time. So at one level, yes, I don't think we'll be talking about analytics as we are currently talking about it, but certainly I think it would have morphed to something else in 10 or so years. What I actually, the point I wanted to make here is analytics is not very helpful if it's not situated in a context. And I think that's something that B schools need to get much, much, much better at doing. And when I say context, as Raj very clearly pointed out, it's not just a business context, although we are at many levels talking about commercial contexts, and that can be a healthcare context, for example. It can be, my background is in advertising and brand consultancy, for example, brand research in the scholarly sense. So you can talk about it being a marketing context or a healthcare context or whatnot. Education is one of the frontiers, I guess, where we are going to be seeing analytics being hugely, hugely utilized. But it's pointless training students for analytics if we don't get them to think about the context within which that tool will be used. In other words, get them to think about I'm going to talk about business, but it could be a healthcare, the business problem, for example, or indeed in the not-for-profit world, it might be the social problem, if that's the case. So I think in situating it there to use, as Raj used, I'm going to borrow his phrase, strategic decision making. I mean, ultimately, this is a tool for that, and we could talk about the debate whether it's indeed a skill or a tool. But I thought I'd just bring that up because these are two, as a qualitative researcher, I've been very passionate about the rise of analytics. And let's not forget, and I know analytics tends to be equated with quantitative analytics. My sense is that we need far more as well. We need to balance that up as well with the qualitative insights that can be gathered, the deep drivers for human behavior or organizational behavior, as it might be. I'm going to leave it there, pass it on. I'll be talking in a few moments anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Lucknoth. Thank you. Yeah, I think on that component, I fully, just building on the points that you made, Lucknoth, I think clearly there's context to this, matters. And that's where I think the beauty of this joint program that we have proposed will provide students with the opportunity to look at ethical issues, look at cultural insight issues, etc., in a variety of different contexts. And so that's the power of this. As to the points that Mike was making, my points of view, for what it's worth, is I think this is a foundational skill, much like critical reasoning, and getting young students to open their minds up and learn how to manage data, derive insights from data, not be scared of it, learn a variety of techniques for manipulating it, visualizing it, etc. These are foundational skills. The currency, the sort of hype around that might change, but I don't see these foundational skills moving away in a period of time. I would just, there would just, other things will need to be built on top of them as we go, would be my 2 bobs worth. But let me loop in on the other thread of our discussion about the differences between studying or experiencing India and Australia, and bring in one of our other colleagues, Professor Sean Starr. Sean.
Hi everyone. I've had ample time to change wardrobes, but I've decided against it in solidarity. That being said, I've been listening very intently to the discussions today, and it's quite apt that we've got a celebrant in our midst, because this has been quite a successful marriage of sorts. Deakin and Jindal have had a very long association and a successful one in terms of institutional partnerships, and this is in many respects another important feather in our respective caps, because in many respects it touches on student mobility opportunities, as well as connecting, I hope, researchers in this field as well between our business schools. Because touching on what Pavan and Lucknoth have just talked about, while context is important, I'm confident that by spending 2 years at each institution, students will, and academics who are teaching the courses, will bring different contexts along with the curriculum, within their bachelor degrees. So I think that's a very important point to make, that not only are students getting essentially the best of 2 worlds, but they're getting the expertise and the context from 2 leading institutions in this particular space. I won't comment sort of too much on the analytics side of things. I think enough has been said. With that being said, I've been intrigued recently and working on some empirical and analytical research in sports and law. And as Raj mentioned, this is empirical research and analysis is going to drive public policy change, and in other areas as well. So to echo the points that many people have made, these skills are foundational and fundamental to our students at both institutions. So I think it's a very exciting collaboration, and I think as Brett mentioned, it's exciting at a time that despite the challenges, we've got very strong educational bilateral ties. So it's another great example of how we can collaborate to benefit a number of different stakeholders at the launch of this particular pathway agreement. So that's all I'll say now for the time being, Pavan.
Shawnee, we're going to let you handle.
Pavan, with your quick permission, I want to just say hello to Sean. And I want to tell him that, Sean, don't get too comfortable in Australia. We indeed can't afford to lose you. So return back soon.
Thanks, Raj. I
Thank
thought
you,
you were going
Raj.
to tell me to put on a suit, but I'm happy with.
Thank you, Raj. I was going to take a stab at Shawnee because he's in Brisbane, the home of the GABA, the Gabatoire. We're going to let him have the last word, but Australia, the Australia-India relationship is in good hands with Sean and me both being here, flying the JGU flag in Australia. Let me now hand over to Lucknow for a vote of thanks and bring the meeting to a close.
Thank you, Pavan. Just bear with me. I've just got a bug in my throat.
Lucknow, of course, supports the Australian cricket team, Brett, so he's getting a bit emotional. But the mention of the Gabatoire.
I used to live two streets away from the Gabba. Wonderful place. Okay, so look, as an Aussie, living and working in India and living and working at JGU, I must say that I'm thrilled to be here today. I think it's wonderful that everyone's talking about throwing around the metaphor of marriage, and I think it's very apt. I think, you know, the Deakin brand is very, very strong, and they've had, of course, a very long connect with the Indian subcontinent and the positioning and the strong equity in the Deakin brand amongst Indian students and in India is very strong as well. Not only that, but it's also very strong within the analytics space. So, you know, as Mike said, and I didn't know this, but as you mentioned, Mike, you were the first to enter this space. So that's wonderful. I mean, we are indeed, you know, honored to be working alongside you in this partnership. So more broadly, I just want to actually thank a number of people here. I think a huge amount of thanks should be showered upon both our Vice Chancellor, Professor Siraj Kumar, and also Professor Gary Smith of Deakin, and of course, Vice Chancellor at Deakin as well, for allowing the space and the sort of, if you want to put it, the philosophy broadly to grow around internationalization and partnerships and the meeting of minds across countries. So I really do thank you for that institutional support as well. I think it's wonderful that these two brands are coming together. Just as an aside, some of my very close friends and cousins, kids, dare I say it, have just entered Deakin this year as youngsters, and they're very thrilled with and BCom as well. So they're very thrilled with their progress there. I should also thank the very contextualizing words from Brett as well. So thank you for your words there. I mean, you know, you really situated what we're on about. And as I mentioned, as an Aussie, dare I say, I don't want to say stuck here, but I'm hoping I can go home sometime to Melbourne and visit my mum and dad. But we have to situate this within a much broader context. And I know Sean as well has talked about this phrase, the bilateral relationship, you know, and you know, I'm very proud, you know, to sit here and be part of this and sort of do my little bit. And I think, Brett, you really situated that. You really situated what we're doing within that broader context of, you know, as you put it, country to country. You know, I think the phrase I jotted down was the internationalization of education in both countries. And I really think that was a wonderful phrase to situate what we're actually doing here. And the other phrase you used was the people-to-people linkages that come from that. Dare I say, the country-to-country linkages as well that come from that, and that's wonderful too. Ravneet, I mean, wow. I mean, I really should thank you and Pavan together, but I'm just going to separate. You both of you have been instrumental in taking this forward. You know, it's wonderful to have such a powerhouse team from Deakin and JGBS. And thank you very much for your really, really sharp and insightful words, because you sort of brought the discussion back down to, again, analytics as well, Ravneet, when you spoke about the joint program as a win-win for students. And you spoke about it in terms of not only just enhancing their qualifications, but from that, it's nice to have qualifications, but from that, doing something with it, which is actually employability. And we spoke about that in the Q&A just before, you know, the employability of student skills. Rajesh and Mike, thank you as well. I mean, it was lovely to hear those insights and about analytics and where it's going, and within the sort of discursive space of the university and the B school. I really thought both the insights were wonderful. Mike, I'd love to have a beer with you one day and see where this goes, this discussion. And because it's something I think anyone who's worked within a B school will be wondering, you know, the discourse is, where's it all going? And Rajesh actually hit on something as well, as in talking about this B school as a place that can play a strong part in bridging sort of that research endeavor plus also industry. And I think that that's what we're on about here. And last, I mentioned Pavan before, but I really do thank Pavan here as well. He's been instrumental from the JGU side in taking this forward. He's been he's recently come on board from still in Melbourne, but come on board at JGU and being a friend and wise counsel to us. And I think we are in very firm hands, and I really look forward to now working on the next step, which is actually making the program work. I think, you know, it's wonderful to have the marriage, and now we have to take this forward. I think there's a great deal of momentum to take it forward, and I think we can really make this work. So I'm going to leave it there. Thank you very much. I hope to catch up with my Melbourne friends and colleagues sometime and have a beer with you all. All the best. Cheers.
Thank you, Luck. Don't forget your Brisbane friend either. But let me ask Mike to please make the closing remarks and conclude the meeting. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. I just had one thing to say in one sentence, and perhaps I'm a little bit oversensitive on this point because I come from a BRICS country like India. I grew up in a BRICS country, and I do just want to emphasize this is a marriage of equals. No one's used the terms, but I don't like pejorative terms like developing economy, third world, none of that. This is a marriage of two complete equals. You know, I'll never forget, Ravneet and I were sitting in the hotel in Delhi in 2018. I still remember this incident, having coffee with people from NHRD. And I was trying to impress them by talking about, you know, HR analytics. I thought, oh, you know, I'm going to impress these guys. They wouldn't have heard of HR analytics before in 2018. And I mentioned this to our Indian colleague, and he said, oh, yes. He says, yeah, no, that's old. We've moved on well beyond that. He says, we've been using AI in recruitment for years now. You know, and I can tell you now, no one in Australia is using AI in recruitment. They were using AI, and we wouldn't be allowed to do this in Australia for ethical reasons, but using AI to determine if a candidate was lying or not, or exaggerating. You know, that's in India in 2018. We won't have that in Australia till maybe 2030. And then we still won't have it because our ethics won't allow us to have it. So, you know, I just do want to make the point. This is not a first world university helping a third world university. This is two peers working together for mutual benefit. I'm sorry if I'm getting political, but for me, it's just a sensitive topic.
Thank you.
Mike, equality is fine, but just that we are better than cricket. So
I'm South African, Raj. You can bring it on, mate. Bring it on.
Yes, I was going to bite my tongue and resist the urge to say that an Indian team will fix the AI around DRS, but we'll leave that. We'll leave that to the keeper.
Just keep watching the South African women. They're winning in India right now.
But I think that's a lovely sentiment, Mike, and I think that's a good note to you know, wrap up the meeting. And so let me just thank everyone. We've run a little bit over time, but it's been a wonderful discussion. And as Lucknoth rightly said, the task now is to make this joint program a success. And as Ravneet mentioned, there are many other irons in the fire, and there are many other ships we want to, you know, together launch in addition. So watch this space. Thank you very much, everyone. All the
Thank you.
best.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks a lot.